In your opinion, in your honest opinion as a young intellectual, why do you think that it matters to have an environment where Africans can actually freely travel from one country to another country within Africa? Do you think it's something that the continent really needs in terms of, reaching its development goals? Or do you think that there are actually more pressing issues to be dealt with? Well, depending on what you consider as important, I think you will be able to have a pretty solid answer to these questions. But in my opinion, being able to create, an actually conducive environment when it comes to freedom of travel and freedom of movement, and making sure that, these principles are actually a reality within Africa from one sub-region to another sub-region, to me it's very important, as much as making sure that we can have, domestic policies to actually boost, domestic economies. Well, the reason why I decided to discuss or to talk about this very interesting topic is just because there's one West African nation that actually understood clearly the necessity of making sure that people can move as freely as possible, within the African continent. And this country is definitely one of my favorite countries, in Africa. I'm talking about Ghana, which is a very progressive country in terms of public policies, in terms of, ruling, in terms of, many other stuff. But today we're going to focus on, the new decision or the recent decision, that is actually regarding the implementation of a visa-free, environment, applicable from January 1st, 2025. If you're taking us on board, you are welcome, and you are listening to the new favorite development and political podcast of young African intellectuals, Smart, Intellectual, Knowledgeable African Talks. And you are listening to SIKA. I'm the producer and the main host of this very interesting podcast and very, very, very dynamic podcast. Well, let me tell you in a couple of seconds, why this podcast is so cool and so great. Well, the reason is pretty simple. My objective here is to make political and development talks as interesting as discussing, a soccer game between, Real Madrid and Barcelona, or discussing an NBA game, or even discussing, the latest music clash, happening in the Nigerian music industry, for instance. I mean, not to say, okay, I'm not trying to say anything. The objective I want you to keep in mind is that discussing development and political should be fun and should be trending. And this is the objective of this very active and very youthful podcast. And I hope you are actually sharing the same views as me. And if you are listening to this podcast till this very minute, this is definitely because you appreciate it. And I'm also appreciating you in return. So thank you for your time. And if you're not yet a member of our community of African intellectuals and of people who share a profound and a deep passion for development talks and Africa's development, especially, well, all you have to do is to click on the subscribe button, and you can also download and listen to SIKA Talks straight from your Spotify application or your Apple Podcast application if you do prefer the audio version. And I personally think that this is very interesting because it allows you to multitasking, if you are currently busy doing something. I think it's pretty much, more interesting, to listen to this podcast, straight on Spotify or Apple Podcast. But if you do prefer the video version, please, this is also as interesting as the audio format. So let's enjoy together. One last request from myself. If you are new here, please do not be stingy when it comes to, dropping a like or dropping a comment. We definitely need your appreciation. We definitely need your support. So if you definitely appreciate or enjoy an episode, this one or another episode, please, feel free to drop a like. Feel also free to drop a comment if you feel like contributing to an active and an ongoing, topic or debate. Your opinions are actually more than welcome. So do not hesitate, and free yourself, enjoy yourself, and press that like button, and also drop a comment and definitely share this episode to grow our community. Well, what I was saying earlier. Okay, I think it's important to pause a bit so that I can catch my breath, first of all. And second, I can collect my thoughts and gather my thoughts in one place so that I can deliver the best analysis possible with regard to this very interesting topic. So, as I was saying, Ghana is set to be visa-free for Africans from January 2025. So, why is that actually a very interesting and why is that a major news? Well, we need to understand that before implementing this decision or this new law, Ghana provided already visa-free access to citizens of 26 African nations. And please keep in mind that the overall nations in Africa is actually 54. If you do not consider Western Sahara as a country, we'll definitely say 54. But if you do consider Western Sahara as a country, we might actually be 55. But according to one decision from the United Nations, Western Sahara is not yet considered as a country, but it is considered as a territory under the ruling of Morocco. Therefore, the official total number of African countries is actually 54. And out of the 54, Ghana is already providing visa-free access to 26 African nations. This is roughly almost, half of African nations, citizens who can freely, decide to visit Ghana for any reason. May it be for a personal reason, may it be for pleasure, may it be for business, may it be for tourism, you name it. There are actually 26 countries that can actually, enjoy all the beauty and all, that Ghana has to offer when it comes to, visiting the country. And this is already a beginning. This is a start. So the reason why I'm introducing this aspect to you is for you to understand that we are talking about a country that is actually trying its best and already giving free access, to 26 African countries, which means that there is roughly over 50% of the rest of Africa, that cannot visit Ghana without, meeting all the visa requirement. But on a very softer note, it is also very important to understand that the rest of these African countries, they could actually obtain a visa upon arrival. What does it mean? It means that you are saved from the stress of having to go to a consulate or an embassy, and applying for a visa at least 1 month or 3 months, like some European countries require. And you can definitely just buy your ticket, hop on the plane. And when you land in Accra, at the main airport, you do all the process. And the benefit of this kind of visa system, the one that we call a visa upon arrival, is that most of the time there is a 99% success rate. It's really, really rare to get a rejection because you're already in the country. And it's a common sense. And unless you are drug dealers or you are traveling for some illegal purpose, if you are not falling within that category, chances are you'll definitely get your visa. So let's say that somehow Ghana was already progressive, giving the opportunity to the rest of Africa to get a visa upon arrival. Unlike some other African countries such as South Africa that are actually very strict when it comes to visa requirement. There are also Libya, Sudan, and some other African countries that are very strict with other African countries when it comes to like giving them, some sort of like preferred treatment when it comes to visa processing. And I think it's very important to stress that. And the reason why I continue making this argument is because I want you to understand that, in my opinion, what Ghana is doing is not groundbreaking. Not because it is not wonderful, it is amazing. But what I'm trying to say here is that Ghana already has a culture of welcoming other African people. And that culture was actually entrenched within its current visa system, which was actually divided in two categories. The first category was referring to the visa-free, scheme that was already available to 26 African nations. And the second category was the visa upon arrival that was available, to the rest of African countries, So moving from that system to a fully opening, frontier system that is actually welcoming the entire African continent, I think it's amazing. And to me, it's just like the logical next step. Because from the beginning, you had an environment or a country that was already making a clear statement to the rest of the African continent, letting people know that our country is open for you. It's open to you as long as you are coming here, to do something legal and something that's going to be both profitable to you, but also to the nation. So in my opinion, this is how we should view, this decision. This is the first step. The second element to also consider is that thanks to this new decision, this new law, which is about to be implemented on January 1st, 2025, Ghana is now, becoming the fifth African country after Rwanda, Seychelles, the Gambia, and Benin, who are actually offering visa-free entry to all African passport holders. And okay, this is where I'm going to be a bit very strict in my analysis and where I'm going to also be very critical in my analysis. Why am I saying that? Well, the first time I found out about this data, this news, I was shocked, but I was not surprised. When it comes to development, I think there's a minimum of coherence that we need to have. How come in 2024, there are only 5 African countries, that are actually allowing or authorizing, every African citizen, all African citizen, to actually visit their country visa-free? My question is, what is the need of a visa system? When implementing a visa system for your country, what do you try to achieve? This is the first question. So I'm asking this question to the rest of African countries that are actually and currently, requiring tons of papers, and I'm talking about those countries that are not providing visa upon arrival schemes, to African passport holders, but are actually requiring a full visa process that has to start way longer before planning on traveling, So in my opinion, the question is, what is it that you are trying to achieve with a strict visa system? On one hand, I may understand that implementing a visa system, at least a lighter or a softer visa system for other African countries will help you, continue generating some sort of public revenue to help support your economy and your tourism sector, while also making sure that you are implementing flexible rules to make sure that you are driving, movement, you are driving attraction, you are attracting, people to come more and more, and visiting your country. But when you are applying stricter requirements for other African countries while applying softer requirements for non-African countries, what exactly is the message here? And I don't know if you're getting my point. And this is very important to consider, especially right now under the so-called Pan-Africanism movement that is actually promoting, like intra-trade, intra-connection, intra-exchange, like intra-movement within Africa. But how come, in 2024, we do not even have 50% of African countries, authorizing all Africans, to travel visa-free, but we only have 5 out of 54 countries. That actually roughly 10% of the continent, that is actually open and available to the rest of Africa. And to me, this is really a pity. Like, it's really a pity for, a continent that is claiming to have progressive leaders and that is also claiming to be implementing, progressive measures and progressive laws to actually boost its economic performance, to boost, its economic productivity. How come, if you want to boost economic productivity, you still haven't reached an optimal level? And when I talk about reaching an optimal level, at least in my view and in my opinion, given the fact that we have countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, which are, very essential and very key countries when it comes to driving, economic growth in their respective region, but also economic growth for the entire continent, not having reached the level where they can clearly understand the benefit of opening their borders, not to illegal travelers, but to legal, travelers, to legal, travelers, like willing to visit the country for any legal purpose that may exist. So I'm going to stop there for the first part of my analysis. Let me know what you think of this analysis. Let me know what you think of this position, whether you believe that, African countries should implement stricter visa laws or implement softer visa laws. And the next part, I will continue discussing this amazing topic, and we will also look at, the other existing benefit, but also the drawbacks of such, a policy, because of course, there's no such thing as a policy with no inconvenience. It's impossible. So thank you again for listening to your favorite podcast, SIKA Talks, the only podcast where strong ideas meet powerful perspectives. À bientôt.